Wanted to go over a few things. I know there's always a lot of questions in some of the Facebook groups about, hey, what do I need to get started? I know it's hard when you first get started and you're watching all these YouTube videos and you see all these different recipes and you think I have to go buy all of these ingredients. I guess my first advice to you would be is pick one of the pours and concentrate on that one. A really easy one is a cup pour, and you don't need a lot. So I was recently at a show this weekend, and one of the people at the show that was shopping came in. Actually, I had quite a few people asking lots and lots of questions about how you create these art pieces. So one lady in particular, she had a lot of questions. She was confused. She was trying to do cup pours and was confused about what ingredients she needed and needed some clear direction. So I'm going to be doing some videos. So a couple tips, as I said, pick a method and stick with it. But the biggest thing is watch your budget when you're starting. I know everybody says start with cheap paints. It's really hard to learn the process when you're using cheap paints and you're expecting cells and particular results that you see in the Facebook groups. So the person that I was talking to in depth, she wasn't understanding when everybody said, you need to get, a pouring medium. And, certain people call silicone a cell activator, and it's confusing for some people that are new. So I don't use silicone in any of my methods, simply because, I don't resin, but I know that if you're using silicone and you intend to resin your artwork, it will make it more challenging and more time consuming to clean that picture or that art piece up. So I don't use silicone in anything that I do. And I use Bright Tone to seal my paintings, my tiles, pretty much everything. If it goes outside, I use Crab Coat. So you'll see my information in the description box. I am an affiliate, and I do love the product. So I wanted to share with you, I did this one the other night. Turned out really cool, but you can see that, hopefully you can see that. It's got maybe 2 coats of Bright Tone on it, and it just looks fantastic. It has such a beautiful color and sheen to it. Usually for my wood pieces, I maybe put 3 or 4 coats max until I get a really nice glossy finish, which this one, it just popped immediately. But just for protection purposes, I'll probably put another layer or 2 on here. And I've had some folks ask me, what I do, what's the process? So my first step in my process is, for wood rounds, for anything wood, I take them outside and I sand any rough edges, because I have found that the rough edges prevent the paint from rolling over or moving properly. And it does make it a little more challenging when you're trying to coat it, with your top coat. So I sand, and then I clean them off really good, and then I use a Zinsser spray. It's kind of like Kills. It's basically like a primer. It's supposed to help, seal the wood so you don't get warping and, mold and mildew, etc. So I spray everything wood with Zinsser. I know a lot of people don't do that. I do, especially since I do a lot of coasters. And recently I've been doing a lot of wood coasters because these things sell like crazy. So these come 6 in a box. I'll show you the box. So if you're interested in getting started in coasters, there's 2 ways you can do it. You can get the ceramic ones, and the only place that I've found them without the little notches on the side is Lowe's. And I can't remember how much they are. I always buy a box of 92. It's like $15. Now you can get them cheaper than that, but they have the little notches on the side, and I'm not a big fan. So, so yeah, there's one option for you there. I do also the same ceramic in 6-inch, and I turn those into trivets and some other functional art. So anyway, I started doing these wood ones, and you get 6 in a box, and I take them outside, and they're usually pretty rough around the edges, and I didn't really notice it the first 2 or 3 times I did sets of them, and then it kind of hindered my top coat process. It gets a little rough along the edges, and then sometimes they have a hard time fit back in the box. So 6 come in a box, and then once you paint them and coat them and put your cork backing on, you can only fit 5 back in here. So I sell these in sets of 5, and as you can see, everything is coated with Zinsser both sides. First couple times I did this, I didn't spray them, I didn't do anything, I just painted straight on the wood, and I'll tell you, every single one of them was like warped. Now, eventually, 2 weeks later, they flattened out, but it took a really long time for them to flatten. So when I started doing this, no issues whatsoever. And you'll find, you know, varying answers on that question. But for me, I don't want to have to wait 2 weeks or have to worry about them warping and not being able to use them. Now, I was having the same issue with some of my wood rounds, and these are pretty thick. This is pretty thick wood, so it shouldn't warp. This is almost 1 inch thick. It shouldn't warp, but some of them, I was having that issue. And ever since I started spraying everything with the Zinsser, I haven't had one single issue with warping. So for me, I would rather just take the safe route and coat everything with the Zinsser and let it dry and then paint it and not have any issues. So that's what I've been doing for quite a while now, several months, with no issues. So, so yeah, I also do this one, and then I'll paint these. Usually I do like a bloom or a swipe or something like that, and those sell really, really well. And then I'll take one of the colors that I used in here, and I'll just paint this solid. Now, if you want to try to do like a bloom or a swipe or something on this, it's going to be very time consuming. I'm just warning you ahead of time. I attempted it the first time, and I just ended up painting over it because it was just, it's too hard because there's just so many surfaces to get. So for me, it's just easier to paint it a solid color. If I use like an iridescent, like a Pebeo, I'll make that the box color because those stand out really nice. I also did like a fluorescent set, and I used this, what is this? I think it's Material Masters. I can't remember what it's called. Green apple, it's a metallic, and that turned out really, really good. Those sold pretty fast. I'm having a hard time keeping stock of coasters. I went to a show last weekend, and there were just, it was a really big show, and they said well over 50,000 people. And I sold so much stuff, I was not prepared for that. So now I have shows lined up, and I have to get going because I don't have a whole lot of product left to sell at the shows because I did so well last weekend. So those are a few tips there. Now, another tip is, you know, what do I need to get started? Well, it depends on the method that you choose, but the basics, don't, you know, try to go out and buy every single thing all at the same time that you see other people using. Just, like I said, concentrate on that one process and get those items. Start at the Dollar Tree. The Dollar Tree is a treasure trove of things that you can use for your paint pouring. And outside of the Dollar Tree, the thrift store is another one. So a tip I'm going to give you is a lot of artists, you know, they'll have their Amazon links and, you know, hey, this is what I use, here's my link to it. And, you know, for instance, a lot of artists are using, you know, these furniture levelers, or, you know, they're special made molded things to stand their paintings on. Let me tell you, there's a cheaper way for everything. And if there's a cheaper way, I'm going to find it because that's just how my brain works. So if you go back through my videos, you'll find little tips and tricks in almost every single video that I put out. You know, how to save money, you know, where to buy something cheap, you know, just little tips and stuff. And, you know, for instance, well, I don't have my tool in here. How to spread your paint on a Dutch pour so it's nice and even. I discovered that this little back scratcher I have, it looks like a rake. I'm sure a comb will do just as well. Same concept, you know, it just spreads the paint evenly. That has worked wonders for me in getting the paint even on the canvas. I mean, it's like foolproof for me. So, I mean, watch my videos and, you know, find all the little tips and tricks. I am the most frugal person there is. I will, you know, I don't like to spend, you know, full price for anything if I can get it cheaper somewhere else. So, you know, all these folks using furniture levelers, you know, more power to them. But let me tell you, I'll take this apart so you can see what I've got here. So obviously I got this puppy pull. So if you're just now getting started, I know Aldi's has these puppy pulls marked down to like $10. So super cheap. Just be resourceful when you're you know, looking for the items that you want. I didn't get one of these right away. It was probably 2 or 3 months, well, maybe 2 months into my paint pouring. I spent the first part of my paint pouring with cardboard sides around a, actually this here that I'm still using for my Dutch pours. I basically took some cardboard and put it around this, I think this is like one of those trays for underneath your like washer. And I just constructed, you know, 4 sides. And if I was doing blooms and spinning, I would have a, you know, the 4th side, you know, you could, you know, open it and close it, but the other ones, but I would line it with plastic because otherwise the cardboard would just get so soggy. And then when I kind of outgrew that, I finally got myself a puppy pool. Let's see if I can get it in the right spot. Okay. And like I said, you know, a lot of people run out and spending, you know, lots of money on things, and I just don't feel the need. So instead of furniture levelers, I do 2 different things. So for the most part, I use these. These are bed risers. Every single, I think I have 3 or 4 sets of bed risers. I think I've bought every single set at the thrift store. So I don't know what thrift stores you have, but you know, I've found all kinds of treasures there. And don't just look for things to use for your paint pouring. Also look for things that you can paint pour on. For instance, people that paint over albums. My Goodwill had albums like 4 for $1. So that's a good surface to start on along with the tiles, you know, an album. Another thing that I found there is, you know, I look at the wood items. What can I pour over? Sometimes, you know, there might be art stuff that people dropped off in there. You might find, you know, stuff super cheap, depending on, you know, your thrift store that you're looking in. But yeah, these are perfect. They're all the same exact height. And if you're using like push pins, like when I do a cloud pour, I'll put push pins, the great big giant ones, in the bottom of my canvas, and then I'll set them inside these 4 squares, so they're not moving except in that little parameter. Don't have, oh, here they are. Buy these jumbo push pins. The little tiny ones didn't do me any justice. I tried to get those to work. These fit in your canvases really well, and they fit like down inside of these. So for cloud pours, for blooms, sometimes if it's a big Dutch pour, I'll do it here, and I'll just spread these out even further. It's a little more challenging to do a Dutch pour in here because of the sides and everything. But for the most part, I do Dutch pours on the tray that I just showed you, with just a piece of plastic on the top of it. And that's all you need is, you know, even a garbage bag would work. You know, cut the garbage bag in half and lay it flat on there. Like I said, you just, you know, think outside the box, right? So another thing a lot of people do is they go on Amazon, they spend $40 to $60 for a pottery wheel or a cake wheel or whatever. I'm telling you, I had this bamboo turntable here, and I think it was actually in my stuff to sell, and since I started, I've been using this, and I basically cover it, and let me tell you, press and seal, it's gonna be your best friend. I use this for tons of stuff. It will make your cleanup and, you know, transitions and everything so much easier. So think about where you can use this. So what I do on this wheel, and you can actually, you know, buy a wood round and go to the hardware store and buy a piece that goes on the bottom of here to turn it into a turntable. You don't need a fancy $60, you know, spinning wheel, pottery wheel, whatever it is. And all I did was take like one of the big long paint stirrers and cut it in half, and I just glued those on there so you have a handle to spin it with instead of trying to grab your wheel. So don't try that, it doesn't work very well. And then I use this stuff that you put underneath your rugs to keep it from slipping on like a hardwood floor. Buy that at Dollar Tree, the whole package of it for $1. I cut a piece for here, it keeps it from sliding off of here. And then if I'm doing a wood round on this, I put a piece of it just like that. And then I put my round on top of that, or whatever you're doing. You don't need to do it if you're just on tiles, the small round or the square tiles. But this is a 12-inch, so then you would just spin and it wouldn't, you know, it's not gonna come off then. So there's a couple of tips and tricks there. And then these, I just got it, I think I got these at Lowe's, and they're pretty covered with paint, so you can't tell what they are, but they're like I think they're a paint stirrer for like the 5-gallon buckets. I think they come in like a package of multiples, I think 4 or something. They're pretty cheap. So yeah, I just put those on there to just, you know, give me a nice surface instead of trying to keep it on these bed risers. And then over the top of this, and honestly, I don't know what size this is. I can guess though, this is 15. So I'm gonna guess this is about 14 and a half, 15, or 14 in diameter. And I'm going to tell you, the Dollar Tree and I think Dollar General, both. The Dollar Tree's cheaper when they have them in stock. This is just a shower cap. And let me tell you, this is the same one I've been using for, gosh, I don't know how long. And let me tell you, the paint just peels right off of it. It's the greatest thing ever. And you just keep reusing it. And see that? I mean, it's amazing. I think you get like, I want to say 2 in a package, but maybe just 1. But these are the nice thick ones. Don't get the cheap ones like the clear gloves that you might use if you know, like the cheap ones that come with like a box of resin, or, you know, I'm talking about the clear gloves that are super thin and just hardly anything there. Don't get those, because they do have those shower caps. You want these really thick ones. They have a really nice thick ones. Actually, let me see. I think I have a package here. So yeah, this is what it looks like. All right. Those work fabulous. And this inside of my puppy pool, all that is again, Dollar Tree clear shower curtain liner. So as you can see, you know, everything is $1. So if you can, you know, get your art supplies that way, where, you know, you're on a budget, you know, and, you know, there's quite a few things you need. Trust me, the Dollar Tree is just a great resource for artists. They have all kinds of stuff that I use. Let's see what else here. So yeah, a lot of times if I'm doing blooms, and obviously I didn't when I was using this paint that I'm peeling off right now, but a lot of times when I'm doing blooms, I'll take press and seal and put over the top of this, especially if I'm doing tile, because tile will get the whole surface pretty dirty. And then if I'm going to do, you know, anything else that same evening or that same day, then it's just going to be all goobery. So a lot of times I will just just throw a sheet of press and seal over the top of here. So yeah, so those are a few tips and tricks, specifically, you know, kind of like geared towards blooms. Try to get as much of this paint off here as possible. And then if you really need to, like if you're going to do Dutch pours or something where you're going to use a lot of canvases and you need to level them, here's another tip for you. This is what I use instead of buying for expensive furniture levelers. I went and bought these at the hardware store. So these are just PVC fittings. They're just straight. One's a male and one's a female, and you screw them into each other, and you've got quite a range of motion here. And if you have any trouble, usually before I do that, I squirt some WD-40 or some coconut oil, or just put something in there that's, you know, kind of, you know, going to make it move very, very easily. So I also have, you know, up and down arrows on them. So basically I have 4 of these, and I set my canvas same as this, you know, I'll align those, you know, 2 here and 2 here, and set my canvas on it, and then put my level on it. So here's my level. So you put that on there, and obviously the center bubble is over here. So you want this side to come up. So I'm going to move this up. Oops. Sorry, I didn't realize it was that far off. Let's start that again. Move this one down. Okay. So that's just a little bit off, and this needs to come up just a hair. And now it's level. And so you just do that with all 4 of your corners, and you're good to go. And these were total with 8 pieces, probably $7 or $8. And I looked up the furniture levelers on Amazon. They're like $24, $25 for just 2, I think. So kind of expensive. And if you're, you know, doing maybe a diptych or a triptych, you're gonna need multiples of these. So I mean, this is probably the cheapest way to go, you know, if that's what you need. When I do the large paintings, I don't use these. If I'm doing a Dutch pour in the puppy pool for the larger area, I'm using these bed risers, just because it's going to be a lot easier. You're just not going to be able to keep your large canvas on these small ones, but these are great. I've done up to like 24 by 12 and 20 by 20 in my tray over here. Anything bigger than that I do here. So another item that you can, you know, get something, you know, cheaper than, you know, furniture levelers. But as far as paints go, I mean, that's really your call, because I mean, that's going to be the bulk of your money. And if you're doing Dutch pours and you're mixing paints, I have a mixing video for that. I have some mixing videos for blooms, and recently started recording some videos for some different cloud pour recipes, pearl pour recipes. Those are all going to be on one video. But I have a Dutch pour video that I'm putting out, that I'm testing a couple of different base paints. But yeah, I mean, the amount that you want to spend on paint is completely up to you. But you just have to keep in mind, when you're using the cheaper paints, you're just not going to get the cells that you would get if you were using a little bit more expensive paint. So instead of buying like cheap craft paint, I would recommend you go to, if you have a Michaels, I would recommend you start with like an artist loft, and you know, if you have a Hobby Lobby, buy some Material Masters, I think is what it's called. I think that's what it's called. Or no, Masters Touch is their brand, I believe, that lower level brand. And just about every paint brand has like an entry level, like a level 1. So start there, and you know, they have sales all the time where you know, buy one get one 50% off, stuff like that. So take advantage of those if you're on a budget and you're starting out. Don't think that you have to go, you know, just stick with cheap craft paint. Now, when I started out, I did use Dollar Tree paint in the tubes for my base paint when I was doing Dutch pours. I think that it works actually pretty well as a base paint. And from there, I went and got some big tubes and jars of the Master's Touch. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, Master's Touch at Hobby Lobby. And it was on sale. And that did really well as a base paint, you know, also. So keep that in mind, you know, if you're wanting to do those. They'll also work perfectly fine, I think, for if you want to do a cup pour. But just keep in mind, if you're doing cup pours and you're buying cheap craft paint is very thin and it's not going to have a whole lot of pigment in it. So the more water you add, the more it's going to take the color from that paint, especially the cheaper ones. So there's a threshold for paint. Obviously your more expensive ones have a higher threshold, and you can search that out on a search engine on your computer if you have any doubt. But just keep in mind, you know, if you go up a little bit in your paint, and honestly the Artist Loft aren't too expensive when they're on sale, I think you'll find that you'll get a better result. So another thing is, you know, at the thrift store, just look for things to store your paint in. So I've kind of like progressed over the course of my, you know, my learning experience. Like I'll, you know, go one direction and then find that, okay, that's not working for me at all. It's kind of a pain in the butt. So I'm going to go a different direction. So I had seen some artists, you know, they were saying, you know, go to Dollar Tree and get these containers and, you know, let the paint dry in them and then it just peels right out. Well, let me tell you, it doesn't just peel right out. And I'm a time person. I hate wasting time. And I found that it just little pieces just stick everywhere. And I was spending more time cleaning the paint out of these containers than anything else. And it's driving me nuts. And when I'm doing blooms, you know, like I was putting my white base, my pillow paint in this and my black one in another one. And, you know, when I'm painting, it stays open for a while and it gets really dry around the edges, around here. It makes it difficult to get on and off. And, you know, then you're having to either pick it up and pour it. And then you got a mess going down your container. I mean, all kinds of issues. I mean, you can see how much paint is gooped around the edge of that. I mean, yeah. And then if you have only a partial container and you have it open, then the paint's getting dried on the sides. And then the next time you put paint in there, that paint's gonna get moist and then it's gonna create big goobers in your paint. So trust me, these are okay. I have transitioned from these to something that I feel works a lot better for me. So this, and honestly, I think Walmart sells these, but a friend of mine gave me 4 of these and I moved all of my pillow paints into these, and they are 28 ounces. And they're essentially a big squeeze bottle. And I like them because they have a big opening, unlike some of the other bottles that I bought like this at Walmart for $1. When you're mixing paints, you don't have a really big opening here to put your paint in. But these are good for, you know, various other things. But for my pillow paints, I have put every single one of them in one of these. So as you can see, I have several different colors in here that I use, right? Including white. And, you know, it has a pop-up lid. You squeeze your paint out. If it gets dry on the top, you only have this one little spot here. See that? And it just peels right off. You got a clean opening again. And it pops up, you squeeze your paint out, you pop it back down. Simple as that. You don't have any paint on the outside. I mean, this one here is a little messy because I was getting kind of crazy with it. But yeah, if you get a little dry paint on the top, you just peel it right off. And no worries. See? Clean as can be. Another thing is I save containers from everything. Like I buy yogurt. And I don't think I have one in here. Actually, yeah, I do. So I buy yogurt in containers like this, a little bit bigger one that I have, I think from Costco. And let me tell you, if you put your paint in these, if you don't want to go buy those at Walmart and you want to put them in something like this, instead of buying these at the Dollar Tree, you know, save some containers like this. Because I'm gonna tell you what, your paint peels a lot better from this container than it does from the Dollar Tree ones. So just FYI. And it's cheaper because you're not buying it. I also save, you know, like this is my Dutch base. I put it in the very first Floetrol bottle that I purchased. I saved it, and I use it for, you know, mixing paint. So Dutch pours, I do quite a bit. So, you know, you want to mix a lot. So you put it in a container like this. Also the Artist Loft bottles, save those. You can mix in those. So yeah, I mean, I save everything. Here is what I was talking about. So this is a bigger yogurt container. Paint peels beautifully out of this plastic. So yeah, so those are just a few little tips that I have to offer everybody today, and I'm going to keep adding to them, and eventually, you know, either put out a series of tips or make one big video for beginners. Have a pleasant evening, and I will see you on the next video. Bye, everybody.